Congressman Smith, thank you for joining us. When you hear Nikki Haley saying that China is preparing for war with the United States, there is a lot of bipartisanship and quite hawkishness when it comes to China at the moment. But do you worry that things have got too far when you hear a presidential candidate saying that China is actually preparing for war with America?
I think that is a very dangerous and very irresponsible way to put it. I mean, it's technically true, okay, in the sense that China's worried about us and we're worried about them. And we're building national security and defenses on both sides, contemplating if a conflict came, how would we deal with it? And also up front, to have sufficient weapons, sufficient defense to deter that conflict. But the way Nikki Haley put it, it implies that China's getting ready to launch a war with us. And that's not actually what's going on. China is trying to bully their way into much of the world. Taiwan is the most obvious example. Our CODEL that was led by Chairman Rogers, who's the chairman of the Armed Services Committee, and we had 9 members on that trip. We went to Taiwan, and we talked to them about that. But China's also threatening the sovereign integrity of at least a half-dozen nations around them. From India to the Philippines to Indonesia. They're trying to push their way in globally. They're even overfishing in as far away as around Latin America. And they're trying to use their power to do that. And the threat of their military is one aspect of that. We need to build a coalition to push back on that. We don't need to be talking about war as if it is inevitable. That is a very dangerous way to put it.
So, Congressman, you've just been on this bipartisan trip, this CODEL, to Taiwan, Philippines, Guam, and Hawaii. Wherever you went, the Chinese army seemed to follow you afterwards with a visit. President Biden had to cancel a trip to Australia and Papua New Guinea just a couple of months ago. And there were concerns that that may have jeopardized some of America's standing in the region, and obviously this is a region that China is fighting for influence in as well. What was your read on America's influence with other countries in the region and how strong that coalition is against China?
Well, 2 big things. One, we need to be present, and there's a lot of different ways to be present. Economically, members visiting in CODELs like this, the administration paying attention, working on development issues in parts of the region. We really need to be there in order to strengthen those relationships. And second, the region really wants us there. There's been a sea change in the last 5 years in terms of how many countries view China. Australia is the best example. 5 years ago, Australia's general attitude was, we do business with China, we do business with the U.S. They're kind of sick of the U.S. telling them, push China away because they're a threat. But then Australia criticized China over COVID. They basically said, you need to be more transparent on this. And China reacted with a full-scale trade war just because Australia dared criticize them. And this is what people need to understand about what China is doing. They are trying to use their economic power to bully the rest of the world into submission. In this case, it backfired. When Australia saw that, they were like, we cannot simply do business with China. We're going to need allies. The same has happened in, over a half-dozen countries in the region. China has tried to pressure the Philippines. They've tried to pressure Indonesia, a whole bunch of different countries. And again, pressuring them for even daring to criticize China. And that is the way China's trying to push out into the world. So these countries are looking for a balance. They're looking for the U.S. and other nations to work with them so they are not subject to the bullying of China. And that's a real opportunity for us if we do it right. Look, we don't want war with China. What we want is a peaceful, rules-based international order. And that is what China, and by the way, Russia and Iran and North Korea, are aggressively threatening. They're trying to bully their way through the world. So we need to be present, and we need to build alliances to offer an alternative.
So, Congressman, on the subject of Russia and its aggression, give us an update, if you will, about your level of concern about further funding that could go to Ukraine to support their war effort. The tranche approved by Congress is nearing its expiration in the months ahead. There's certainly some of your Republican colleagues have expressed real reticence to send that much more to Kyiv. And it seems like we're at a delicate moment of that conflict, with Ukraine's counteroffensive off to a sluggish start. The NATO summit next week. We see the attempted coup in Russia. How vital is it right now to get that funding to Kyiv, and how worried are you that we won't be able to?
Look, I'm very concerned about it because I think it is vital. I think everything that I just laid out about what China's doing, that's what Russia is trying to do now. And understand that stopping Russia in Ukraine, maintaining a sovereign democratic Ukraine, and allowing Ukraine to get back as much of their territory as possible is the #1 most important thing to do in this battle against certainly Russia, but also against what China and the other countries I mentioned are trying to accomplish. They're trying to break the rules-based international order. And if Russia succeeds in Ukraine, that's going to make a lot of the world look at it and say, they're likely to be successful. If you can't beat them, join them. So it is crucial that Russia is stopped in Ukraine. And the counteroffensive that Ukraine is engaged in is really difficult to retake territory. It's a lot harder to attack than it is to defend. We are reaching a critical moment. You correctly identify some of the Republican criticism of this that is undermining our ability to do it. And then, more than anything, the story you were talking earlier about how the extremists in the Republican House are threatening to push forward an agenda. Their ability to block our appropriations process and potentially shut down the U.S. government undermines our ability to offer that support as well. So yes, I'm worried about it. We have strong bipartisan support, but it's this little group that seems to be controlling the agenda that we need to make sure we reverse that.
Yeah, an important conversation we will be revisiting in the weeks ahead. Ranking member of the House Armed Services Committee, Congressman Adam Smith, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks for the chance.